Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is the Tech Time Traveler, and today we're going to be scanning like it's 1989. Many Fridays ago, I was a high school student at a private school in Ontario, Canada. The tuition there was very expensive, but the school noticed I was keen on computers and offered me a deal. If I agreed to put in some hours helping out in the computer lab, they'd cover the tuition as a bursary. Nice. Access to the computer lab meant I was given a key to it, which I forgot to give back and still have 30 years later. Whoops. Anyway, I was generally allowed access to the lab anytime classes weren't on, as long as I locked up afterwards. I'm not even sure if computer labs are even a thing in high schools anymore, given that most students these days are packing around laptops. Anyway, when I first attended the school, we had a lab full of Commodore 64s. But sometime in around 1988 or 1989, the school moved the computer lab down a floor and outfitted it with a bunch of Intel 8088 powered Sanyo MBC16s, as well as one generic 286 that served as the teacher's computer. It was all tied together via a Novell server. Recently, I've been on a minor mission to recreate that computer lab in a mini form. And one thing I distinctly remembered about that place was there was a scanner there, and that was actually the first scanner that I ever used. I remember it was an old overhead type, but for years I was unable to find anything like what I remembered via eBay searches. I just couldn't recall any kind of model or manufacturer info, and searches for overhead scanner often turn up modern book scanners instead. I mentioned my struggle on the VC Fed forum, and one person suggested that maybe it was a Chinon DS-Scan or DS of some variety. So I looked that up on eBay and boom, there it was, with the box and everything ready to go with a nice low buy it now. I guess the seller knew there probably wasn't very many people looking for that sort of thing nowadays. The history of computer scanners goes back further than you think, and as with most things involving tech, sorting out who did what first can be difficult, if not impossible, since not everyone advertised or warranted mention by the news, and simply disappeared anonymously. We can start by talking about the invention of the fax machine though, which traces its roots all the way back to the late 1800s, followed by the invention of the photocopier in the 1930s. It seems like as far as computer applications go, the first scanner developed for use with a computer was put together in 1957 by a team from the US National Bureau of Standards. The drum scanner they devised apparently scanned this image of research team leader Russell Kirch's young son. From there, advances included the first commercial flatbed scanner by Xerox in 1973, and the first scanner that could read characters regardless of font in 1974. According to the internet, something called a ScanMate arrived in 1975, but I couldn't find anything else about that. S100 computer users in the late 70s technically had a way to scan stuff also. There was this thing called the Cat 100, which was a two-board contraption that allowed you to grab live video, and had an add-on called the Frame Grabber that let you capture still images from said video. How people were capturing video on computers that had a minuscule storage capacity back then, I don't know. I thought maybe newspapers.com would be useful here for research purposes, since most people selling a computer scanner would, advertise it, but not really. Unfortunately, the word scanner has been used to describe many things, including radio scanners and even the grocery store checkout scanners, which apparently revolutionized retailing. Actually, that'd be a kind of an interesting video, but not now. I did manage with some digging, however, to find some examples of scanners that were appearing on the market at the time. Check out this Wang PIC. No, that's not what you're probably thinking. Get your head out of the gutter, man. No, I'm talking about the Wang professional image computer with this scanner that looks like a drill press. It came out in 1983. Although I don't think this would be considered a true personal computer scanner though, because it retailed for a lot of money and was clearly aimed at business. Then we get to Microtech. If you're into digital art, Microtech may well be a familiar name to you today, as it is to me. A Hong Kong-based company in the 1980s, Microtech came out with what it called the first black and white sheet-fed scanner in 1984, which ran at 300 DPI. At several $1,000s, I'm not sure it would qualify fully as personal, but there you go. Apparently some versions of Hoover vacuums also had a scanner. Wait, that probably doesn't work like I'm thinking. Between 1983 and 1987, there were mentions of various computer scanner products being developed, some actual products, but some seemingly more like vaporware. Among real-looking products was the $3,000 CompuScan and this $500 device called the Omni Reader, which could scan a staggering 40 pages of characters per hour, and so on. I couldn't find an explicitly personal computer desktop scanner until the Dest PC scan arrived in 1987 for the Mac. You see what I mean about things being a little bit convoluted. The DS-3000 and its slightly less enabled brother, the DS-2000, were released around 1987 or 1988. And yes, seeing it now, this was the exact device I had my first scanning experience with in our old computer lab back in 1989 or so. What's really cool is this one came with almost everything, including the original box. We can see the advertisement here for what it does. This scanner ran around $1,000 new, so it really did have to do a bit of a sell job with skeptical consumers. After all, most people in the late 80s didn't even have a personal computer in the first place. It's not like now where we're constantly needing to fill out forms, scan, and email back to somebody. Nobody had internet in their homes. Scanners up until the late 80s had been mainly the preserve of businesses, archivists, and hardcore artists. While this Chinon scanner isn't the first scanner ever, its price point probably helped it to target the personal use market for the first time more directly. Just seeing it is trippy after all this time. This scanner is basically a pure black and white scanner designed mainly with scanning text or illustrations in mind. There's no grayscale, so you lose a lot of the nuanced details of a photograph. The scanner does employ some tricks to achieve something like grayscale, but it's definitely not, and that led to some teenage angst for sure. So let's open up the box here. Wow, it still even has its original foam inserts. Here's a little Ziploc with the manuals. Unfortunately, no software. I'm really hoping I can find that online somewhere, otherwise this is going to be a really short video. There's a user manual as well as a technical reference manual, the latter of which would be handy if you were trying to interface your own software to the device. There's also this interface card, which I believe is just a standard parallel interface for those that didn't have one, or didn't want to tie up the port their printer was plugged into with a scanner. The DS-3000 can use both parallel and serial communications, up to about 19.2 kilobaud, I think. And then there's this software manual. Unfortunately, like I said, no discs. Now these are something I definitely remember that were with the scanner at the school. These little plastic things are basically used as a frame, which you put at the corners of whatever you're scanning to delineate where you want to scan. I guess this eliminates the need to pre-scan and crop to the area you want to go to. Seeing these little feet in the original auction jogged my memory enough to convince me that this is the very model of scanner I used back then. And we have the wall wart power supply, always a big fan of wall warts. Finally, the scanner itself. Man, this thing is heavy, solid metal base here. It's so cool to see this again after all these years. I remember trying to digitize photos of a visit to a friend's cottage the summer before. It was a 2-week stay in paradise I never forgot and was eager to memorialize. The base is pretty basic, with just a single contrast knob and a power button and of course the scanning area, and some indicator lights that I hope for audience purposes are pretty self-explanatory. If they aren't, I can't help you. The power button is over here on the back right side. Around back we have the covered serial port and the open Centronic style parallel port. Over on the left side we can see banks of dip switches that are used to set the speed the scanner operates at, the maximum resolution it can reach, and whether it's communicating via a parallel or serial port. Based on the manual here, it looks like the scanner was configured for 9600 baud, 300 DPI, and parallel communications. So yeah, I'm inclined to leave it like this just for a demonstration. The scan head is quite small compared to what I'm used to now, but of course it's raised so it has a pretty wide field of vision. It doesn't employ any sort of backlight at all, relying on the room's ambient light, which may have been one of its many shortcomings. Alright, let's plug her in and see what happens. We'll just rotate here and press the power switch and...
Holy shit! Did you see that? That was unbelievable! Please tell me the camera got that, please! I think you used a little bit too much pyro for that stunt.
Where'd he go?
I think his head's over there.
Hey, what are you guys doing?
Actually, nothing bad happened, folks. It does appear to have turned on without incident, but after about 30 seconds I can see both the scan and power lights flashing together. I'm not sure what that means, but it's probably not good. I really hope this thing isn't borked. It is pretty close to 40 years old, so it is entitled to be. Maybe it's just needing the computer or driver to talk to? So what to use to test this beast out? Well, I think I should choose something somewhat appropriate to the period, late 80s or early 90s. And I think I have just the ticket for experimenting with parallel cards of questionable safety status. How about this extremely rare Victor 300 SX25? This is a rebadged Tandy 2500 SX that I snatched off the internet when I was having a bit of a Tandy freakout. It's in extremely good condition, which is just perfect for seeing if the parallel card from the Chinon will blow it up. I'm pretty sure it'll be fine though. I've not really explored this machine much since I got it. As I recall, as the badge suggests, it's a 386 25MHz machine, and yeah, it's totally a Tandy. I think it has a few megs of RAM and maybe a 100 meg hard drive or something like that. It also has VGA graphics, which will be useful for the scanning demonstration. It's definitely a tad faster than what I was using in our computer lab, but it's still period correct. It's also really easy to work on. You basically just remove the 2 screws on the sides of the cover and 2 screws on the protective card cage, and voila. Unfortunately, I don't have anything in the documentation that shows what these jumpers on the parallel card do. This card was optional since the scanner could work on a serial connection, and I'm not sure if there's anything really special about it or if it's just slightly faster than what was supplied in computers at the time. But I'm guessing these jumpers are used to configure the parallel port address, and I'm hoping it's set to something other than LPT1 so I don't have to mess around with the built-in port on the computer. Reassembly is the reverse of assembly. Easy peasy. Now we'll do a quick explosion test. Nope, no explosion. Nice. Yeah, I really love the look of this Victor. That triangle power button with a combo power hard drive indicator light is far out, man. It's like E pluribus unum in here. Now, I'm going to break the period correct situation a little bit here and use this totally non-period correct LCD screen. And that's for 2 reasons. One, to eliminate the possibility of CRT whine, which I never seem to be able to fully do, and it hurts young ears. And also because my camera has difficulty syncing to CRTs. Plus, I only really have one VGA CRT, which is my PS2 8513, and it's old, the focus isn't working very well. Oh, and it has a bit of a drinking problem.
You think I don't know? I saw you looking at those SVGA monitors. I know what's going on. And you wonder why I'm drinking? You.
Okay, so with the computer connected, maybe the scanner will be happy? Nope. Well, that's one way to get my long-winded ass to keep a video to 10 minutes or less. Now, I can hear some buzzing in the scanner head. Being that this is a mechanical device that has sat for probably 3 decades, I'm betting any motor grease that's in there is dried up and that this thing is just stuck. So let's take it apart here and see if there's anything we can do to help it. So I'm going to fuss around with the plastic panels here. Yeah, it's basically just a few little screws around this thing, and then I can get the scanner head loose, and I can pop the head cover off. And yeah, there's the inside. It's just a small DC motor and some reduction gears. I think they're a little sticky. Let's see if we can free them with a little bit of help. I wouldn't mind applying lubricant, but I'm nervous because I don't want anything running down into the printhead and damaging the image sensor. So I'll just try exercising things a bit, applying power on, and see if I can use that to shake it loose, at least for the video. After a while, it appears my efforts are paying off. It's trying really hard to move the head, getting faster and faster with each attempt until finally... Sorry if that hurt your ears. Yeah, the primary drive gear is a little bit loosey-goosey, but the noise itself, that's not far off from what I remember. Yeah, I do remember the one in our lab was quite loud. Before I go putting stuff back together, I'll power it on and off a few times and just make sure that it's actually staying unstuck. Okay, so let's put her back together here, and now we'll try looking for software. In setting up to do this video, I was pretty confident I had all my ducks in a row. I had done a quick Google search and found this driver on softwaredrivers.com, which is affiliated with Driver Guide. Unfortunately, I forgot Driver Guide, which actually used to be useful, has been taken over by scammers who pull a bait and switch and try to send you bogus driver optimizer software instead of what it is you're trying to download. Which is too bad. I'm pretty sure these programs are exactly what I was looking for based on the date codes. Without those, we may not be able to do much here. I did a bit of research though and discovered Zsoft's PC Paintbrush comes with a Chinon scanner driver. And as I recall, this may well have been the program I used to do my first scans. So we'll run through the setup here. The days when you had to tell your software what kind of hardware you had. How quaint. The VGA chipset in this machine is made by Paradise, and I think that's good for 640 by 480 with 256 colors. So we'll try for that. I just have to put the Zsoft supplied Chinon.sys driver file into my config.sys, which is immediately causing me confusion because this drive is using Stacker, so C is actually a compressed volume, and the master drive is D, and they both have config.sys files, so I'm not sure which one is the correct one to mess with. It takes me a little bit of screwing around here to figure out which file it's reading from. I think if I edit the config.sys on the compressed drive, it's supposed to update it on the D drive, but instead it wanted to revert to the old version of the file. Weird. So I made it the same on both C and D and put a copy of the Chinon driver on both drives and then didn't allow Stacker to touch it. So now that I've got that working, let's get into PC Paintbrush and kick off some scanning 1989 style, shall we? So the first thing I think I'll try is some text. That's probably the primary intended use for this thing, and it should be something it can easily handle, right? I dimly remember there being specific OCR software available back in the day, and I might have even played with it in the computer lab, but yeah, it's been so long I can't remember anything at all about how it all worked. I'm not sure if certain versions of Word and WordPerfect in the Windows 3.1 era back then allowed input from a scanner, or if you had to first scan with dedicated OCR software. I think it might have been the latter, and I think that was bundled with the scanner, which is now unobtainium. Even if I had it, I'd still need the proper DOS driver for the scanner, rather than the Zsoft specific one, so we won't be able to do OCR here. But we'll try a basic scan at 75 dpi and see what we get. That's, yeah, not great. I'll try boosting the resolution all the way up to 300 dpi. Maybe that'll get a better result. And immediately I'm confronted with a problem. Not enough memory. Yay, 1990s DOS PCs. Now, it's been a long time since I've messed with stuff like HiMem and EMM 386, and I've long forgotten the distinctions between expanded memory and extended memory and how to manage all that. So I'll try and figure this out here. According to the Zsoft manual, I can see what memory resources PC Paintbrush sees by going to Help and then Statistics. And it's telling me it's seeing pretty much no expanded RAM or extended RAM and not a lot of conventional. There's also some disk-based virtual RAM. And if I'd been paying attention, I would have clued in that that last one was my issue. You see, I'm used to using the word memory to describe RAM, not hard drive space. Instead, I went on a frustrating 3-hour quest to try and wrest every last byte of conventional memory out of this thing by pushing as much as I could into high memory, disabling unnecessary drivers, and removing unnecessary stuff from my autoexec batch file. But no dice. Even with over 600 kilobytes free, PC Paintbrush isn't having it. And that's when something occurred to me. I had been blithely assuming that I had lots of hard drive space on this Victor. Why wouldn't I? Every other old PC I've acquired had lots of hard drive space remaining. And anyway, I'm used to having whole terabytes at my disposal. What's a few megs? Plus, I was armed with Stacker, right? Well, it turns out I didn't have nearly enough free space for storing 300 dpi pictures. The joys of small hard drives. So I deleted a couple of things I don't think PC archaeologists would miss, and voila, now we can scan at 300 dpi. That wasn't painful at all. And it only took a whole 2 minutes to scan. So 300 dpi doesn't really do jack to improve things. I mean, it's legible, but there's lots of artifacting. Yeah, I remember OCR software back then struggling to read even perfectly legible text, so I think this would almost certainly have been a problem. I don't think this is a problem with the age of the scanner and, stuff going on with the print head. I think this is just literally how it was back then. Okay, so now to try a diagram. This is the artwork for one side of a replica I'm doing of the MAI Jolt, which was a single board computer based on the 6502 from 1975. Yeah, we'll talk about that in another video, but for now let's just see how this scans. Let's try 300. I'll go hit the pub while we wait. Yeah, not well at all. Remember the Sol Terminal PCB artwork I was using to try and create a replica of the Sol prototype PCB? I'm still working on that, by the way. Yeah, well, I think they must have scanned that a long time ago with a scanner like this one, because this is exactly what it came out like. Basic diagram style pictures seem to come off okay, but yeah, not great either. Yeah, this computer is really bogging down as I'm trying to mess around with this giant, for it, picture file here. Yeah, 640 by 480 resolution may have been the shiznit back in the day, but now, no, this just sucks. Okay, let's try a real photograph here, just to relive my computer lab experience more fully. And I'll be using some period correct photos here from the 1980s that I have from my album. This one is of my cat, appropriately and originally named Kitty. Yeah, and in black and white mode, Kitty turns into something rather sinister. Now again, I did say this scanner doesn't have grayscale capability. My teenage self would have to wait another year or two before getting a Logitech ScanMan for Christmas to enjoy that particular feature. But right now we're stuck with Chinon here, so let's see how we can improve matters. One way is via something called half-toning or dithering. This is an old trick that goes back to newspaper days. If you look under magnification at an old newspaper photo, you can actually see that it's not grayscale, it's a series of strategically placed dots that your eyes assemble into a coherent picture with the illusion of color depth. The DS-3000 can do this using something called Bayer dithering. This is so named after Bryce Bayer, the inventor of the Bayer filter. And I'd love to explain to you right now what that is, but that would require another hour neither of us has, plus probably a year's worth of research on my end. Suffice to say, it's a technique that creates the illusion of grayscale or color depth. As we can see here, as I run Kitty through said process, the picture is much closer to life. Well, relatively speaking, if you stand back about 30 feet. I did experiment a bit with different resolutions using Bayer dithering and found 200 dpi to be roughly ideal. Unfortunately, this was as good as it got. Being a student in 1989, I didn't really understand the limitations of the scanner and was frustrated trying to fix my pictures and colorize them. I didn't know what grayscale was and wouldn't until the happy day that my ScanMan finally arrived. So what do I think of the Chinon DS-3000? Was it good value for its day? Well, I guess kinda. I mean, if you were a bookworm and really into digital art, I guess this was an alright deal. I mean, it was certainly better than spending $3,000 on those other scanners that were available at the time. It's not like computers were super powerful during this era anyway. If you just wanted to digitize and mess around with some drawings, or maybe scan some homework stuff, yeah, this could do the job. Although much better grayscale scanners were really just around the corner. Scanners just weren't a priority for folks in the 1980s, so I doubt any scanner really sold in large numbers until sometime in the early 1990s. It's quite a thing to be face to face with an object you haven't seen in 30 years. Closing in on 50, I'm at an age now where I have memories that go back several decades, and I've learned the hard way that memories that I'd taken as ironclad aren't quite so. This is why I had trouble figuring out the right model of Panasonic business partner we had in my dad's office in a previous video. Memory does funny things over time. I thought this scanner was much louder than it actually was here on the bench. I could have sworn it had a really loud fan, but I realize now that's my memory conflating the scanner with an original HP LaserJet printer I briefly owned. So it's cool to set the record straight like this. That's about all I can show you for now though. These scanners really didn't have a lot of functionality. Buying this thing was really all about nostalgia. I doubt I'll have much use for this going forward, and again, that's one of the reasons that I don't typically collect peripherals. But don't worry, I've got some other neat stuff on the horizon. I didn't just acquire the same scanner my computer lab had, I also acquired the same computer they were using just recently, which we'll see soon enough. I've also been working on my replica projects for the Sol terminal prototype, as well as this Jolt board I've nearly finished. You'll be seeing videos of those eventually. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, please smack that like button. If not, dislike is there waiting for you.
Excuse me.
If you're new here and you like what you're seeing, please consider subscribing. And if you really like what I do, feel free to join my Patreon, which has various small perks like early access to my videos and patron-only content. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.